Hi there, my name is Charmaine and my Wow Bite presentation is called Differently Abled. You walk, I ride. I'm a person with a disability. I have a spinal cord injury which I acquired while living overseas. No, it was not in Australia, everyone. It was while I was living in Malaysia. The family had gone there to establish a business and I was mugged in a car park. Over the years, I've learned to cope with my disability, and I'd like to share with you actually a few sustainable tips on how I cope with my disability. So number one, living with disability is like living with a child, except that that child will never grow up, that child will never leave my home, and like a child, I have to nurture my disability every day, 365 days of the year. Sustainable tip number two, tough love. I try not to let my disability overwhelm me. And I've become a pro at learning on how to deal with my disability and also finding innovative ways to cope. For example, when I attend a venue, I'd always make sure that I check ahead of time to make sure that it's accessible for my needs, and also to discuss the layout of the toilets, and prepping in advance if I need to take to go on travel anywhere, and that just might be to go down to the beach or take a longer travel. So I make sure that I get up terribly early, drink enough water so that I'm well hydrated and that I'm mentally prepared to go on board. Tip number three, I have certain coping mechanisms that I've put into place over the years. Several of these things are very important to me, and so I try to partake of them as often as possible. I love movies, I love reading, going to the theatre, relaxing at the beach when and if I can, attending art festivals, meeting and making new friends, and these are just some of the ways that have helped me cope with my disability. Exercise, of course, being the most important of them all. Sustainability tip number four, inclusion matters. Most times when I attend a function, I'd be the only person there with a disability. I welcome people to interact with me on every level when I am around areas like that. It is important to me that going out and being a part of my social network as much as possible is important, because it does create an awareness and of people who have disabilities. And so I welcome anyone to come up and chat with me and to engage in conversation. Number four also applies, where inclusion matters, also applies to me being employed, and I was for several years. During that time, I loved the interaction that I had with my colleagues, the meetings that I attended, and to contribute towards the workplace in any possible way that I can. After I lost my job, I became a volunteer with the Brisbane Lighters Festival, and I did that for nearly 4 years. I also was a volunteer tutor with the TAFE College in South Bank, whereby I assisted in a class environment to teach English to migrants who had newly migrated to Australia. I also was an advisor for Amparo, which is a not-for-profit organization that advocates for people with disabilities from CALD backgrounds. And for those of you who don't know, CALD means culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds. And in 2014, I established my own head wrap company called Diva Head Wraps, which has taken me to Melbourne and to fashion runways here in Brisbane as well. I get to interact and meet with a lot of younger people. I also get to do all my own photographs and my own creative input into Diva Head Wraps. And then last year, the highlight for 2019 was becoming a part of QDN, which is Queenslanders with Disability Network. And in that capacity, I advocate for people with a disability. And I've been able to contribute my take on what it's like to live with a disability, and also to meet with people who have a disability other than a spinal cord injury. And then last but not least, as they say, sustainable tip number 5, to practice mindfulness and to have a strong mindful mindset. It is a known fact that people who live with a disability, the physical and mental toll that it does take on them can be life-sapping, for a better way to call it. So it's important for me to maintain a strong mindset. And one of those ways that I've managed to strengthen my mindset is to be a parent to 2 children who was 13 and 9 at the time of my accident, to make sure that I gave them the best possible life that I could as a parent, despite me having a disability. As I said earlier, I acquired my disability in Malaysia, in a foreign country, and being surrounded by people who never understood what it was like to have a disability actually created this resilience and mindset that I was not aware that I had if that did not happen to me. I have traveled widely through Asia in my wheelchair, and I can assure you that it has been challenging all of the time. Going on the road in a wheelchair with no pavements has been something that I've just had to do because I wanted to be able to explore the place. And then my exercise, I find that has created a resilience and a mindset within me that would not have been possible. So you can find me pumping iron at my local gym, and there I'm being overseen by a personal trainer. I attend my Pilates classes as well, and the type of Pilates that I do is called clinical Pilates. So I get to use the reformer and both the Cadillac machines. And I attend physio once a week, where I'm now learning to actually walk longer distances, and also to be able to increase the quality of my gait by using a set of elbow crutches. But for me, the most important way that I practice mindfulness and create my mindset is when I actually go and swim in my Zen zone, and that is the swimming pool. When I put my head in the water and totally wipe out the white noise and anything else that would cause a distraction, is when I practice my mindfulness and my mindset becomes a lot stronger. So I enjoy doing that tremendously, and I try to get down there to the pool at least 2 to 3 times a week. Thank you for allowing me to share You Walk, I Ride with me, and it has been a pleasure sharing my story with you.
Hi everyone, I'm Katie and I am the creator of Get Papped. Get Papped is an initiative based around a birthday card to create a sense of community, openness, and to end the stigma around pap smears, or as they're now technically known as cervical screenings. So a couple of years ago, I was about to head on a once-in-a-lifetime trip to Europe when my results for my pap smear came back abnormal. So I was quickly rushed to see a gynecologist to ensure that my cells were the low-grade abnormality that they showed up as on the Pap smear. That was quite terrifying to me. Every time I Googled anything, it would come up with the word cancer. It was a little scary to be reading online. I was crying a lot, and I just felt such a wave of anxiety leading up to this. And then afterwards, waiting for my results, I had to go and see a gynecologist and have some biopsies taken, which was quite invasive, but nothing too horrific. The fear was much more than that, and I realized the stigma was much more than that as well. Nobody was really talking about pap smears, about female health, and I didn't really know who to speak to about it. So after I received my results, which were low grade abnormal and just meant that I needed checks again, I had some time to think about it, and I realized, like I said, all of the worry just came down to the shame and the stigma and the lack of knowledge about what was happening. So I decided that I wanted to create a kind of community where it was safe to discuss pap smears, and it was a place to get education, create community, create conversation. So I did that through starting the Instagram account Get Papped and through creating these birthday cards. So according to the Australian Medical Board, every woman should get a pap smear or cervical screening when they hit 25. So this is a 25th birthday card with a pledge inside. So you should give this to somebody turning 25. And inside it says here, I promise to ensure blank organises her appointment for a pap smear within the next month, and then happy 25th birthday. So this card is just designed to open up a conversation and show accountability and your love and care for someone. I think there's nothing more special than giving a card like this to someone and telling them, you're really important to me, your health is so important to me, so please take care of yourself. So I have an online store where you can buy the cards, and we have the Instagram account where you can engage with the content, share the content, and create this conversation around pap smears and around the stigma, and hopefully end the stigma that does crowd female health. I think it's so important, and I think it's something that we all need to start discussing amongst our friends, families, loved ones. We shouldn't be ashamed to sit around the dinner table in front of everyone and say, you know, you should have a pap smear at this age, you should be checking your boobs regularly, you should be discussing this with your doctor. It's definitely nothing to be ashamed of, and I think we are a lot more open about breast health, and I think that's because the stigma with cervical cancer is that it comes from HPV. And the reality is that almost every woman is going to get HPV. The stats are that 70% of women can contract HPV. So there really isn't a reason to be ashamed of it, because I can assure you that you know somebody who has it or has had it. And having stigma around that is just so debilitating to starting this conversation. Ending the stigma can literally save lives. So why wouldn't we do it? So basically, that's Get Papped in a nutshell. If you want to learn more, visit our Instagram. We are found under get.papped, and purchase a card if you know somebody turning 25. Thanks.
Pandata, Karin ko a Efon, Naranguro Naladu, Naranguro na Kondokoro, Mama Karin Adoki, Anna Sindru, Yilona Bari. Assalamu alaikum, ismi Efon, Abui ismu Jacob, Homin nas Kondokoro, Umi ismu Magul, Homin nas Sindru Urajaf. Ana bit Bari min Junub Sudan. Hi everyone, my name is Efon. My father is Jacob and he is a Bari man from Kondokoro, and my mom is Margaret and she is a Bari woman from Rajaf and Sinduru. I am a Bari woman from South Sudan. Firstly, I'd like to pay my respects to my elders past, present and emerging, both here in Australia and back home in South Sudan. I pray that you always guide me and protect me and that your teachings and culture will forever live on. I would also like to pay my respects to the elders of this land in which I stand, the Jagera and Turrbal people, and pay respects and acknowledge the elders past, present and emerging, as sovereignty was never ceded. Just a little background about myself and the bio that would have been read out at the WOW Australia Festival. I am 18-year-old Efon Victorio. I am an Egyptian-born South Sudanese woman who is purely Australian raised. My passions include writing poetry, reciting poetry, dancing, advocating for the voiceless, and educating people about South Sudanese culture. I started reciting poetry and won my first poetry medal at age 6. I then began writing my own poetry at age 14. Death is My Shadow being the first poem I ever wrote. I graduated from St. James College and I am currently studying nursing in university. I aspire to inspire others one smile and laugh at a time. As you can see, I'm wearing traditional South Sudanese attire. This is specific to my tribe Bari, as I have said previously. We would call it a kurbaba. And to just walk you guys through my introduction, it was a welcoming and get to know me speech in 3 different languages: in Bari, which is my native mother tongue, in Arabic, which is one of the national languages of South Sudan, and in English, which is my first language. The title of my piece is My Home, My Australia, and it illustrates and represents me as an individual, but also me within a collective group, which is the South Sudanese community. It consists of 2 poems I made, which is Death is My Shadow and We Are Drowning. Death is My Shadow just represents the journey of many South Sudanese families to Australia. It also illustrates the corruption of South Sudan through war due to tribalism and a corrupt government. We Are Drowning illustrates the Australian media's attitude and biased representation of Australian South Sudanese youth. Adut Run was the last thing I heard before death became my shadow. Not you and my family or even Australia can save me from the sorrow. I have no idea where I'd be. Sudan, Kenya, Ethiopia, Lord Jesus, please set me free. I'm a mad dog, black, infected with fleas. And oh yes, I tell you, South Sudanese politics did this to me. But if we collide and put our differences aside, we can be much more than the youngest nation on earth, the most bloodshed on its turf. With females escaping with children on their backs because the government lacks but won't accept the fact that we're suffering because they can't keep their own country intact. But we have no choice. We have to run for a future rejoice, where we can make our families proud and proclaim out loud that I am a South Sudanese. But this can never be because death has become my shadow. It swallowed me up and led me to a meadow, where clean water flows, food is never low, and was firstly and originally Aboriginal owned. But how can I be happy when my brothers, sisters, aunts and uncles are back home dying, and the government is consistently lying that they have everything under control? Yeah, our own South Sudan president can't even read off a scroll. You see, I was only a few months from brought to Australia. That does not mean I should deny my race, heritage or colour, for I made it out alive, while others die and run to survive, because death has become their shadow. Burning, slaughtering, killing is evil. All these tragedies have befallen on my people, and the world just sits while eating their meals, forgetting that innocent lives and heads are getting chopped off with every meal. They never asked for death to be their shadow, to continuously follow them around until they're lying flat on the ground with not one pulse in their body. While our government sits around and doesn't feel sorry for destroying our motherland, vibrant and rich of future leaders that made its own people go mad and chased out the believers. People from Dinka, Equatoria and Nuer will suffer unless we, the Ross community, come together and chase the demon of tribalism hidden deep inside. Then we can put our differences aside and collide. But until then, death will forever be my shadow. So that poem just educates you guys on the horrific experiences of a little girl from South Sudan, Adut. And basically, it just teaches you that No one runs away from their homeland, from what they know is home, if it was safe enough for them to stay there. Every asylum seeker or migrant has left because they were unsafe in their own area. Their journey is more safe than them staying where they are. So it's very important to understand that and to also acknowledge that and help them through their experiences instead of turning around and being racist towards them or stopping them from just basic human rights, which is safety, which is access to clean and nutritious water and food, which is little things like that, which with that poem, I tried to educate you guys on and why so many South Sudanese people are displaced. Because right now in South Sudan, there are more than 4 million South Sudanese people displaced. This is around the world. This is within Uganda. This is within Kenya. This is within Egypt. And in all of these refugee camps. So it's very important that life is not easy in a refugee camp. Life is not easy away from your homeland. Australian South Sudanese, we are drowning because of the media reports, because of our skin, because of our melanin. As the ankles of my legs become heavier, the deeper I go in. South Sudanese and Australia, we are drowning. We are suffering the effects of being unapologetically black, and that's what the media lacks when they report we are gang violence in a program to attack. South Sudanese and Australia, we are drowning. We are drowning deeper, deeper like the ocean. The anchor's getting heavy with every parliament promotion. South Sudanese and Australia, we are drowning. We are told we are the problem. We are the dogs, we are the animals, we are the untamable beast, a beast that continues to repeat, elevate and compete with our heads held high, with our voices in the streets. As I drown to the bottom and the light in my eye becomes dim, as I become lifeless as the anchors hold me down, the anchors are the categories you put me in. I can't even be myself, be loud and free. I can't even chill with my Melbourne friends because we're deemed a menace to society. You have taken our tournaments, disheartened our souls by claiming we are gang violence, but my voice will not take hold. As the anchors pull me down, closer to my ancestors I go, but if we drown today, our legacy will forever be in this land, riddles unsolved. We will not drown and be depressed because what you have said. We will lead, turn around, break the ankles and the ankles that is holding us down. You will only allow us to flex our muscles and see our strengths as we grab your descriptions, burn them down and elevate to greater lengths. So that poem is probably my most emotion-evoking poem because I myself have experienced racism. And I've been in Australia for 18 years of my life. So I came before I was 1 year old. And I'm not going to lie, the racism was not as evident as it is today. After all the media stereotyping and the biased nature in the media representing South Sudanese youth, I feel like the racism has increased. I most definitely have experienced it on the streets much more than when I was younger. And it's just the feeling of not being wanted without doing something wrong. You go into a store ready to buy something and you're being followed around or you're being questioned or you're always having to print out a receipt just to prove your innocence. And I don't feel like it's right. As a human, you should feel safe. You should feel like you're welcomed. And labeling Australia as a welcoming country, it is very important that we welcome refugees and asylum seekers because it is already hard enough not being in your homeland, but experiencing racism it just makes everything more difficult. So that poem really hits home because I myself have experienced it. Unlike Death is My Shadow, I was a minor, I was a baby. By the time I was born, we were already in Egypt, so I wasn't able to experience most of the hardships that my parents had to experience bringing us over here to Australia to give us that better life. But most definitely the racism and all those emotions that I speak of in We Are Drowning, I have experienced it myself. And my poems are just there to educate and advocate for the voiceless. I just want you guys to be educated and have knowledge on our culture, which will help you better understand how we grew up and how we act. One thing I want to say is we always stand with the victims. Overall, I hope my piece educated you about South Sudanese culture and migrant experiences, and I also hope it made you more mindful and open-minded towards refugees in certain situations. Thank you so much to Wow Oshaya for having me at the 2020 festival. Unlucky we weren't able to actually present in person, but I hope I shared awareness and advocated for the voiceless. As you know, I am a proud South Sudanese woman. I'm so proud to be representing my people today. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Hi, my name's Marie Cohn, and I'm here to share my story about how 100 companies joined together to make a lifetime of difference for victims of domestic and family violence. I was born the eldest of 5 children into probably a poorer working class family. My father was a gambler and an alcoholic, and I think he was abandoned by his mother and grew up in an orphanage, and I think that led to a lot of pain and rage in him, which he took out on my mother, not us. But consequently, my childhood, I would struggle to have happy memories if I thought back on my childhood. And but one thing I can recall was that as a very young child, I had a strong desire that my life would be better when I grew up. And I didn't want the way I was living as a child to continue through my life, and I didn't want it to continue with any children that I might have had. That I firmly believe that while your family shapes you and influences you, it does not define you. We define what our life is like. So, but as a consequence of some of that, I found myself at 17 pregnant, and as you did back then, you got married. And I went on to have 4 children. As was the belief back then, good mothers stayed at home and they didn't work. So I spent 15 years as a full-time mum bringing up my children, 3 at that time. But it got to a stage where I felt very unfulfilled and I just needed to do something. So I actually went out into real estate. I loved doing that, and it was just a wonderful career choice for me. And I went on to have my 4th child, but by then, I guess, 2 people that got married for the wrong reasons as teenagers, the cracks were emerging, and I decided it was time for me to leave my marriage. So I found myself with 4 children, and living totally off commission was a little bit scary, but I probably felt freer than I had ever felt in my life because it was the first time I was actually doing something for me. And during this time, I found a strong desire to start my own business. And I guess the second thing I'd like to share, because these things were, I guess, critical to me when I was working on Bella's Sanctuary, was that we're only limited by our own beliefs. And I had this nagging voice in my head that I couldn't start my own business because I had 4 children, the youngest was a baby. It would be impossible. But the more I listened to that voice in my head, the more I thought that was just an excuse. And I do firmly believe that we are only limited by our own beliefs. So I decided I wasn't going to let that limit me, and I embarked on the journey of starting my own real estate business. And it was, again, the second most defining moment in my life where I actually felt like I started to grow wings, and I started to develop as a person. I loved what I was doing. I loved the people around me and the teams I was working with. So again, I share that because if there's anybody else out there in a similar situation where you've got voices in your head telling me you can't do things or you shouldn't do them, listen to what's going on in here, because that's far more powerful. And I believe if you follow your dreams, you really can accomplish them. So I started a new, not a new career, but a new job with Halcyon. And Halcyon's a company that creates and manage over 50s lifestyle communities. I've been working for that company now for 14 years, and this is where the story of Bella's Sanctuary begins. Probably I've been working with the company for 10 years, and I was sitting that morning ready to go to work when I read in the newspaper another article about, tragically, about a woman that had lost her life to domestic and family violence. And what hit me more than anything else, the article was talking about how there was such a shortage of refuges, and women were finding themselves in these situations with nowhere to go. And that really struck a chord with me, because part of what our business does is we construct homes. And I really felt like we could do something about this. And I also felt the people around me, there was a real appetite in the community for change. I think people want to see domestic and family violence eradicated from our society, and it's gone under the carpet, it's been swept under the carpet, it's kept behind closed doors. People feel shame about talking about it, so it doesn't come out. But anyway, I brought my idea, I guess, to our company, and they were just wonderful about it and said, absolutely, we want to be on board. We think that's a great, project, and we would love to help. So that began the start of a journey, and from there it was getting land. We managed, just through conversation, to have a discussion with Mirvac, and we shared our dream and our idea with Mirvac, and they said, we've got land, we can provide land. And that was the day this project became a reality. And it was probably one of the best days of my life, knowing that it would become real. I phoned DV Connect, and we started to form a relationship with them, learning. And it was a massive learning curve for me. I didn't actually realise how much of a need there was. But the wonderful thing, I think, that came out of it, and this is a wonderful part of the story, was that we had a public company, a private company, and a not-for-profit that was so aligned to solving this problem and so committed. So we worked together for years to develop the project. When we first spoke to our team about it, I had tears. I couldn't believe how many people came up to me afterwards and said, that is my story. I was a victim of domestic violence, and we just didn't know it was. When we started to then, once it became real, we went out to our contractors and our suppliers, and as the title says, 100 contractors and suppliers came on board and said in a heartbeat, how can we not do this? How can we not show to the women of Queensland and Australia that we want to be part of the solution? So this wonderful army of tradies and subcontractors joined with us to create what is now being called Bella's Sanctuary, which is 5 units. On the outside, it looks like a normal home, because we wanted the women in there to feel like they were in a place that was normal and safe. And this is it's a bit of a game changer. It's transitional accommodation, so they can stay in these apartments for 6 to 12 months and rebuild their lives, and come out of it feeling like they have had enough time to. One of the most unfortunate things about refuges is that women have to get out of them really quickly. There's not enough of them. So whilst often women go back to their homes or their abusers because they have nowhere else to go, and what we've provided with Bella's Sanctuary is a place where they can stay and take their time and truly heal and truly rebuild. It was an amazing project. I think every person that worked on it was committed. They had the same sense of values and commitment to being part of the solution, not part of the problem. And it's our hope that this continues, that this sea of support from the community at large, and in particular the construction industry. But we had so many people that even when we rang them and asked them if they'd be on board, told us their stories about their sister or their mother or their daughter or their auntie that had experienced or had to flee from domestic or family violence situations. So I think I'm going to run out of time to share all of the ins and outs of this, but I just want to finish by sharing two things, because if you are out there and you're working on something that is challenging and hard, one of the things that I truly learned in this was where you have a team of people that are committed to a goal, and are committed in their heart to a goal, then you can overcome every obstacle. And that's what we did. We just worked together. We listened, we learned from each other, we hugged. And now we have a place where I think for years and years to come, children and women's lives will be changed as they get to rebuild themselves and turn away from harmful situations and learn to embrace life in peace, safety and security and follow their own dreams. It was a marvellous story. I hope that you've enjoyed it. Thank you.